Okay, hi. Hello, YouTube. Um, Tonight we're going to go over a piece of skull bone that's on the floor. So this will be an age-restricted video. We do believe, according to the police reports and the medical examiner's reports, and how they describe where certain bones were located and how they packaged them and transported them, that this piece of skull belongs to David. And it's highly important. We're going to look at this very closely, and we're going to compare this, and we're going to rule out a lot of things and then rule in some possibilities, like, does this piece of bone show the entrance wound? It's possible. I'm not saying that it is for sure, because there are going to be people who will twist everything I say. But I think maybe by the time we get done, it'll be a good possibility. And unfortunately, we don't have the full autopsy report, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of honesty when it comes to this case. So, it's left up to us to try to figure it out. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Hold on a second. And right now, hopefully what you guys are seeing is the piece of skull. Now this is the picture BCA 4760 if you want to look it up in the files. We're going to zoom in. Here we see some skin attached. And I know I've said this a million times, but let's take a really good look at this piece. This is the skin. Do you see these straight lines? And these straight lines? And here. We'll look at this on other photos as well. This is how we know that they moved this skull piece around. Well, this as well as where it's located on these pages. Because this moves, you can see more words as you go along. And then you see these are actually connected. And let's go to the next photo. Well, this is a different angle, but you can tell it's been moved because it's no longer straight. Let's go back. Straight. No longer straight. But what's good about this angle is you see these lines. These are not lines that are done by a dog. These straight lines are not done by just falling off. These straight lines are done by a sharp instrument. We know a knife was located at the scene. Was it the knife that was used? We do not know. But here, you clearly see this has not been done or removed by an animal. This is not the work of an animal. These lines, they're too straight. Okay, we're going to go back to this one because I want us to focus on this piece. Now look at these dark areas. You see that dark area there? This here, all of this dark area here and here and here. This is bruising, and bruising can only happen prior to death. And here you'll see some indentations. And here you'll see indentations and marks. This was not a very good photo, so it's kind of blurry when we scroll in. Now here, this area right here, this is what they call the suture line. Now, I don't know where this part of the parietal bone is located. Is this the left side, the right side? I don't know. But we do know it's the parietal bone. Let's go over here, see if we can get a better look. Now you can get a better look at the bruising done on this scalp. Compare it now to these sections where there is no bruising. and here. You clearly see an impression. This was made by some kind of tool. Something hit this skull and left this impression. That is not normal. Do you see anything like that over here? Nope. Same thing with this area. You clearly see an impression and bruising. Here, let's follow this. You can see a circular. Now let's follow. Go here and here. This is why I said this one here reminds me of a socket wrench, because of the type of design. Have no proof of that. I'm just telling you what I see. Because when I ran this through filters, it came out like the design of a socket wrench. But again, this is bruising. All of this is bruising. But what we want to take a look at is this area here and this linear fracture. This fracture goes a very long way, and these are usually associated with gunshot wounds. Could this be, are we looking at right here, the entrance wound? It is possible. Entrance wound, chipping away some of the other part of the skull and skin, and then fractures. One fracture all the way down. This is what I question. And no, this is not, I know at one point I heard someone say that they thought that this was one of the typical suture lines on the skull. This is not a suture line, and we will go through that in an anatomy photo. This is actually a linear fracture, and it's coming off of this defect right here. Now, these right here look like this is where the suture line was. Is this the coronal or is this the lambdoid? I don't know. Again, because I'm not that well versed in what these bones look like when they're removed and at a crime scene. I'm only just guessing, but this would be the suture line area. This is not. That much I do know for a fact. Let's get closer look here. Again, the same thing. You can clearly see the suture marks. Is it lambdoid or is that the squamous or sagittal? I don't know. Squamous would be the side where it connects to the temporal. Sagittal would be the top of the head where it would connect to the frontal bone. And lambdoid would be is it connecting to the back of the skull where the occipital would go? I don't know. But that would put this, it's still, regardless, if this is indeed an entrance wound, because you can see where it's kind of, the damage is going in, it's not coming out. And then the fracture radiating from that, it puts it not on the side of his head. It would put it at the top or the back of his head, which makes a huge difference, folks. AKA, he didn't do it himself. So again, you can see where it's, if it was coming out, this would be gone, and it would look different. This looks like it has the beveling going toward the inside, like what you would expect if a bullet is entering. And again, this is a fracture. But let's look at these marks again. Look at this. These are indentations. These are impressions left on the skull. Here, an impression left on the skull. And this whole section looks like it's kind of indented. This whole area. Here, bruising. All this dark area is bruising. That's a bruise. And if we look here, let's see, you can see another one where it looks like it has the markings of a wrench. Okay, I think that's it for those photos. Now, let's compare it with the parietal bone. Here we have a parietal bone. Right here, this is the sagittal, I think. No, coronal. This is coronal. Up here would be sagittal. This is the squamous. These are the sutures. They call the lines where it connects a suture. So this is the coronal suture. Do you see how it kind of gets jagged and kind of crazy there? Which is what you see here. See how it gets kind of crazy and pointy? That's what it looks like. Now, this is an actual skull. This here would be the sagittal. So could it be the sagittal? It could be. Like I said, I don't know. This here would be the coronal subfrontal bone, and this here would be the lambdoid suture because it's the occipital. So it's either this side or this side. So it must be the right side. It would have to be, because I think they have no, that's the left side where they have the temporal bone. So I don't know. Now we know it's not the temporal bone because here's what the temporal bone looks like. Compare it. Does it look anything like that? Nope. So we know it's not the temporal bone. Is it the occipital bone? Here's what the occipital bone looks like. Oh, well, let's go back here. It's kind of giving us a 3D view. Let's run this and then until it's going to stop here in a second and show us the what the back side of the occipital looks like. Okay, here we go. This is the occipital. Here would be the parietal. Here is the temporal. Here is the frontal. And it takes up okay, there we go. Here is the occipital. Does the photo look like an occipital? No. So it's the parietal. And again, with a linear fracture. And is this section right here the entrance wound? If it is, this would probably be the right side, because I do believe they have the exit wound, and that exit wound is on the left side. And where the parietal bone is located, this is the left side of the skull. I don't think they show a right side, but this would be the right side. So is it coming from here? Is the shot coming from here or here? But so we know that he's not going to put a gun up to the top of his head and shoot himself there or here. That had to have been done by somebody else. You know, they want you to believe that it came from this side and that he put the gun to the right side of his head, but that's not where that wound is. You know, again, and then plus you have these indentations here. You clearly see marks of some kind of tool and bruising. What happened to him? And this, I think, is very, very clear. Especially, I mean, look at that. That is an indentation. That is a mark. That is an indentation. That is a mark. What left those designs? And it bothers me that nobody seems to give one flying flip what happened to this man. It's easier to call him a murderer when look at his skull. Look at this. Here, we have more indentations. Here it looks like a wrench. These look like 3 separate types of tools. This design is different than this design with little diamond in the middle. These designs are different than this design. Is this one tool or two tools? I don't know. This is a weird design. I don't even know what could have caused that. But there we have it. Let me go through this one more time. Here's what a normal parietal bone would look like. Here are the suture lines. Coronal suture line, sagittal suture line, lambdoid suture line. We have a temporal bone. Here's where the squamous suture line would be. You see how jagged these are? So when we see this, I know a lot of people seem to think, oh, these are dog teeth marks that did this. These are the suture lines. That's where it connects to another part of the head, the skull. And then the occipital. There we have it. So just so we can get the suture lines done. The coronal suture right here. The lambdoid suture right here, which connects the parietal to the occipital. The squamous suture, which connects the parietal to the temporal. Right there. And then at the top is the sagittal, which they don't show here. So let me stop. So I hit stop recording instead of stop sharing. But I hope that this gives you a little bit better understanding of the damage that happened to David's head prior to his death. Bruising doesn't occur after death. It only occurs prior to. You can clearly see that there are marks and bruising on his head, on his skull. And again, was that one section? Was that the entrance wound? Because that is that's a linear fracture, and so there's no other reason. Because as you follow that fracture, it comes to that like V area, and that makes sense that would be where the entrance wound would be. And I'm not saying it is for a fact. I'm saying it's a good, strong possibility. So it's like he shot up here, or he shot here. We don't know. It's somewhere on one of the lines. Or was it back here? Was it at the back of his head? Was it at the top? We don't know. We don't know. But what we do know is that it's a good, strong possibility it wasn't at an angle that he would have chosen. Could it have been at the lower side? Let me share my screen with you one more time. Let me do a screen share one more time. Here it is. But I don't know what part of the head, scalp, or neck this belongs to. But along this suture line, and this looks like it was broken off. Again, this really piss poor photos. God, these are horrible photos. Excuse my language. Yeah, look at that. But this here, these are the suture lines. And that definitely doesn't look like the side of the head. I don't know if you guys can still see. Hopefully you can. But if you can see this, you can clearly see that there are no areas that match this on the temporal side. So was it where it meets the top of the skull? Let's see. I don't know. It doesn't look like that either. But up here, it looks like it could be where it like meets the front of the head. So that maybe a coronal suture, maybe. So this area. But it's not here with that straight line coming down. So let's not confuse that. Could this be the coronal suture? It could be. But this defect here with this linear fracture is not this sagittal suture. I mean, it could have gone here. Was it here with the fracture going this way? I don't know. We don't have enough. So this looks like it was removed. Part of that was removed from the rest of the bone. But again, this is a linear fracture radiating from this area. So if we put this here, this whole section here is missing. Could it be? So it's not here. This is not what we're looking at. And I know there is going to be someone who's going to jump in and go, now that, trust me, that's, you can see for yourself. You see how jagged and stuff the sagittal line is. That is not what we are looking at here. This is clearly a radiating linear fracture. So where did the shot originate? What is this part of the bone? We don't know. But again, and that's this one last thing we're going to cover before I wrap this up. Again, is the skin. You see how straight this is. And again, we'll see that they've moved these skull pieces, the skull piece, time and again. Here we see more of the sharp angles. The other one, it was straight across, so we know they've moved this. This was moved. There it is, these sharp angles. This is definitely done by a sharp instrument to make these types of lines on the skin. And it was moved even more. Now we have more of the skin here. But again, last time, these dark areas, bruising. What instrument left that mark? What instrument left that mark? Which shows up better in one of these other photos, this one here. What left that indentation and that mark? What left that mark? What left this mark? What left this one? What left this linear fracture? And is that the entrance wound? Which means that, here, let me stop sharing my screen real quick. Which means you're going to shoot yourself this way? You're going to shoot yourself this way? You're going to shoot yourself this way? No, you're not. This, along with other things, like I said, when you start putting it all together, the indentations, the marks, the fracture, is that the entrance wound? It's a possibility. I am not saying with 100% certainty it is. I'm saying it looks like it, especially with that radiating linear fracture. You have that. You have his bullet missing. You don't have his blood at the scene. It's missing his DNA from the gun, really. Maybe some blood spatter. You have his blood on the magazine left within a fingerprint. How? How would his blood get on a magazine inside the gun if he did this when he shows no other injuries, supposedly? It's impossible. Impossible. Everything points to this man being a victim. So if you guys have any other questions, comments, it would be great. Please feel free to leave them below, and we will see you all next time.